Welcome to Tea Time with Shayleigh and Amber, the podcast where we talk about all the shit that your horse wants you to know and what you can do about it. Amber is a horse trainer and a personal results coach, certified in Theta and Semitic breathwork. Shayleigh is an animal communicator who also teaches communication. Both knowledge seekers with the intention of sharing that knowledge and hoping that we can encourage the listeners to do the same. Welcome. Today we are talking with Denise Elizabeth Byron, friend and soul family, intuitive, astrologist, and so much more. We were all over the map today, as per normal, starting with past lives and embodying the divine feminine, to why we have more problems on the left side of our body typically, and even threw in some talk about the planets. So hold on, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. We are super excited to be talking with Denise Byron today. Thank you for joining us, Denise.
Thank you for having me for tea. Do you have tea?
I have water.
I have water.
I'm drinking a sparkling.
Okay. Well, we have the essence of tea.
Tea essence.
Sure. We're spilling the tea, so to speak, metaphorically.
Yeah.
So we have talked with you before and had a little co-created meeting on astrology, but I just dove into your website a little bit and was looking into some of the stuff you do, and I'm like, wow, I was barely scratching the surface. I felt like when you did our astrology reading, it was so heavily focused there, but you're like this little intuitive guru. Can you explain to our audience kind of what you do and who you are? Because I was so fascinated reading through all of your titles.
Shayleigh, thank you for that. Well, that's a really nice way to frame. And I really appreciate that, because I know for so many of us, we do so many different things. We are so many different things. So I appreciate that you liked that, because I know sometimes that can be confusing. But yes, I have been very fortunate, as you already know, to have been able to make a transition back 25 years ago into being able to work for myself and use the intuition and use the intuitive gifts to support others. And so I think the main thing that I would emphasize primarily is, when I'm working with people, I'm mentoring. So regardless of what I'm doing, I'm working with people so that they can access their intuition. And beyond that, their connection, we're going to go straight into all this other stuff, their connection to their guides, to the other realms, to their animals. I mean, a lot of what you both are doing, I mean, you're already doing that, it's happening in your world. And one of the things that you're both doing that I just appreciate so much is you're helping people find their belonging and helping people find their normalcy in the world. Because, this is the thing, who we all are with our intuition and working with our guides and working with the other realms, the tools, for me, astrology, numerology, sensuous wisdom, which is something that I created based on some very powerful teachings that I learned from other teachers. All of the things that we're doing, we're meant to bring more healing into the world, more support for everybody to feel their connection to themselves, to the other realms, and to their bodies. And this is the piece, like the somatic piece that we've all talked about, engaging with the body. So in a very long-winded way, because it's my way, I'm very long-winded. What my love is being able to bring the body, to bring your power center, your womb space, your intuition, the other realms, and the tools all together into teachings, classes, retreats, or individual sessions that help particularly women access power, compassion, love, wisdom, all of it. So it is a lot. So when you go on the website and you say that, it's like, well, yes, because all of that is important. And I am very grateful to have had a lifetime of being able to develop all of this, and I think, and I don't remember how much we talked about before, but all of us, anyone who's here right now, and anyone who's listening, when we're children, we're so tapped in. We still remember what it's like to be out of the body. And then we come into this life and we come into the body. And where we find our solace primarily is usually with animals and nature, because often, I'm not happy to say, our gifts are not always welcomed into the world that we incarnated in this time. Although I would like to think that all of you, Amber's a mom. Shayleigh, do you have children? I can't remember.
Nope, just animals.
Just the animals. So yeah, but again, you're working with lots of people who are raising their children to be more connected to these realms, so that this is what will really shift and change our planet, I think, is for us to remember who we are on all the different levels. So, okay, that probably never answered your question. Sorry, but you just gave me an opening and I just had to share. So there we are.
No, it definitely did. And I love that, because that's like that's what it's all about, is connecting the mind, body, and spirit. And it's just so wild how the spirit is like all the way up here. And like what I've found, especially with Amber and I doing this 21-day vision quest that we've been doing, is like people really do want to remember. Like it's the communication part and the connection part, and like the calling that energy back to yourself, that like when you do get a little taste of it, you're like, wow, this is amazing. This is so empowering. Like I do want to do this. And especially when you find the right people, like I love that you hold that space for people, and you create that like little, I almost want to call it like a protective bubble, because like when we are like discovering these gifts, like it does feel like you have to find the person who resonates with you and like is not pushing you. What I loved about like your reading with us is you kind of told us what was in our chart and what you were getting intuitively, but you weren't necessarily saying anything indefinitely. You were like, this is, you set us up to think how we want to think. And I feel like that's so important in healing work or any type of like this rediscovery work, is like not making the decisions for people and setting them up. So that's really cool. I'm piqued by this sensuous wisdom. Like what is that? I want to know.
Okay, she wants to know. Thank you. Before I talk about that, I want to say thank you, because I really do. I know when I'm doing a session, I can get very enthusiastic and see all these things, but I really do. We have free will. We have choice, and we are here to learn and evolve. And it's not my place to tell anyone what to do. Although sometimes I do get a little bit assertive, like this is a good thing to do. This is really a good thing. So sometimes I'll lean in, but honestly, you're right. It is up to each individual to choose the path and the way the path unfolds. And your soul, you're on a soul journey. Well, I'm on a soul journey. We're all on a soul journey. So what is best for our soul in any given time? With that always changing, because we're around other souls who are always changing. So I know I'm really excited to hear that the 21-day challenge has worked out so well, because I really, the premise of it and the practice of it is so powerful. So I'm so happy to hear that. Okay. Sensuous wisdom. Long story. All right. So for many years, and I'm just going to be really upfront and open with this group here, and I know it will go out into the public, and I'm okay with that eventually, that's fine too. For many years, I was very disconnected. As someone who survived abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, etc., there was a disconnect in me for much of my life, living from about here up, not wanting to be fully in my body. And, having body image, dysmorphia. I was at one time in my life, anorexic, and then moving through all of these pieces that were so uncomfortable, right? Just so uncomfortable to be disconnected. I'm a very body oriented person. I'm a Taurus, for goodness sake. I'm in the body. I'm of the earth, right? So, but I spent a lot of years disconnected and pretty unhappy, but not really knowing how to connect. So fast forward to 2001, and I met a woman who said, "Oh, I think you would love my class." Like, okay. She didn't tell me what it was. I liked her, but I was like, okay. I just, was exploring and deepening into my spiritual journey. And so I went to her class, and wow, was not expecting what the class was about, but it was very much about connecting with your life force, your sexual energy in your body. And I had toned that down because that's what we're taught to do. We're taught to just, contain that. Don't share that, don't be that. And things have changed, obviously, over the last 22 years. There's been lots and lots of changes. But in my time and in my way, I was just opening up to how to be authentically in my power, how to be authentically connected to my body, how to be connected to my life force, how to be connected to this amazing power and love that exists in the body. And anyway, to say it blew my mind is an understatement, but I stayed with it, and I stayed with it, and I stayed with it, and I stayed in the classes every week. And 3 years later, I think I probably might have had a breakthrough prior to that 3 years, but 3 years later, I really got it. Like, all of a sudden, I felt very connected. I wanted to say, coming out of the story for a minute, it doesn't take 3 years for most people. It takes one session, but I was a little behind, so I had to take my time and move through it. So anyway, gratitude to my teacher for her support. And then it was time for her to have a baby. So she handed her classes over to me. I was like, are you sure? Because but there I was, and I started teaching in 2004. And I started teaching her work, which is called the Tantric Dance of the Sacred Feminine. And it has a more of the emphasis on the sexual energy and the Tantra piece, which is great. And I'm really glad that I had all of that training. And then I did that for a while. And then the time came for me to change my life and shift into the world and be able to bring the 14 years that I had been spending deep in contemplation and spiritual connection, deepening my gifts. It was time for me to come back out into the world. And so when I did that, I happened to move to Santa Cruz, which is where I met Amber eventually. And that was back in 2011. And in 2011, Sensuous Wisdom was born, because what I realized was I wanted to expand the container a bit so that women can really get in touch with sensuousness. And it's interesting because, you can't use the word sensuous online. Like, you can't have if you try to use it in a website, or it gets banned, because being sensuous, I guess that's some really terrible thing. But what it means is understanding all of your senses, including your sixth sense and your seventh sense, or you know what I'm saying? So bringing them all together. So Sensuous Wisdom really is, it's an embodiment practice. It is something that I love teaching, and I do train women to teach this. And it can be in a class, it can be one-to-one, it can be by yourself. It's a practice and it is something that includes movement, breath, deepening into our connection with the divine feminine. It includes deepening into the connection with our senses, starting with our bodies, right? Starting with the body, and then moving into that connection with the other realm, moving into that connection with our intuition. And I love it. And I'm, as a brand name, it didn't turn out to be such a great brand name because it just got, censored all along the way. But sensuous wisdom is our birthright. It's who we are as women. We were born with this amazing, we have so much power, energy, and life force and intuition and graciousness and compassion and love and creativity. And it moves in our bodies. It is who we are. And so by acknowledging the connection between, as you were saying, the mind, the heart, the body, the soul, the spirit, and bringing them all together with some ancient practices that have, been going on for years, and some very important, I think, ways of coaching and mentoring, because there's ways to create a group that creates safety. It has to be a safe enough environment. It has to be a place where women can, in fact, find their way back, remember, as we were talking about, remember who they are, and then dive deeper into this incredible power that exists within us. It's creative power. It's a loving power, and to utilize that to heal ourselves, to create our next steps in the world, and ultimately, I hope, bring healing into the world. So when I moved to Santa Cruz and Sensuous Wisdom found its place to begin, I added in some Celtic elements, cross-quarter days, Celtic holidays. I added in tarot, and we have, we follow the moon because, we're lunar beings, so we follow the moon. So it is all of the things that I am, all in one. And what I love about it is it's very simple and yet very complex, and it brings women back to who they are. I mean, this is who we are. And yes, I will say it is exclusive for me to be teaching women who are physically born as women. And I realize that there may be other people out there that are wanting to connect to what I call the womb space, right? But connect to the power center. There are women that I have trained who can do that, I think, even better than I can, because I've been so steeped in this way. When I'm doing my training, I really want each woman who trains with me to go out in the world and find her way, and that way can expand to other people that may or may not have female bodies at birth. And so there is that element that is not my expertise. My students are taking it beyond where I am, which is really exciting as well. So for me, it's my thing. I love it. And I'm really grateful you asked, because I don't talk about it that much. And it's worth talking about because it's a birthright. Like, we're here on the planet. And it is, I think, one of the most healing modalities when engaged in the practice. So it is a movement practice. It's a movement meditation. And there are different parts of it that allow each of us to drop in at wherever we are in that moment, to feel where we are, to connect with the body. And then what arises from that place is powerful, and it's deep, and it can also be fun and playful, sensuous, alive, passionate. So anyway, okay. So that is my share on that. And I'm, of course, if you have questions, I'm gonna answer anything you want to answer.
Yeah, I have so many things to say and so many, okay, firstly, that's so cool, because I do feel like, so Amber has got me into this theta healing, and one of the things that I have struggled with is skin, and through theta, I've learned that it is my inability to receive touch in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's crazy because it manifests to all of my animals. I either have these like overbearing animals who always want to be like in my personal space, or then it shifts over to my horses who don't want any physical interaction. And it's so cool to see that mirroring. But like when you think about physical touch and like getting like there's something so crazy about being connected to someone else or to yourself, and it literally creates like a visceral reaction in your body, like that power, that energy, which is so cool. And I just remember being a kid, you know, that I feel like growing up, and I'm sure other people share this like experience, but my mom was like, do not have sex, do not like, you know, look at this, like you know, don't get pregnant, whatever. And it's so funny. I don't know why this came up for me as you were talking, but and it's funny that you were like, oh, do you have kids? Because this all ties into my little journey the last like year or so. Is that I deliberately, like when I was a kid, was like, I don't want kids, but every psychic that I talked to is always like, oh, you have a little boy with you, and I see this energy and blah blah blah, and you'd be a great mom, and everybody's like telling me all of this stuff, and I'm like, no, I don't want kids. And like, I realized over the years that it was like me not wanting them because like I was told as a kid that I, you know, like I shouldn't have them or it would be like a negative thing. And I did this like healing meditation practice one day where I like looked into myself and decided like I did not want them for myself. And what was really cool is I ended up like talking to my womb space and being like, you can be whole and complete as a person and not have children. Like you do not have to have a kid in order to be a woman. And it was so weird that that is like what I had to tell myself. But anyway, I love that practice. So cool.
Well, I appreciate that. And I don't have children myself in this lifetime. So remember now, you know, bringing things together. Shayleigh, it's very possible you had a lot of children in the last lifetime. I had 11 in my last lifetime. So, I mean, sometimes you come into and you're like, not this time, you know, maybe not this time. So, but I appreciate what you did. You spoke to your womb space and you listened. And the womb space is the place of power and creativity. And I actually want to talk about the piece around sexuality. Yeah, this is complicated because we live in a really difficult world right now. I mean, Amber's raising kids right now, and like, how do you do that in this world where sexuality is, where do you even start? Like, I bow to you, all of you who are parents. But our sexuality is for us. And this is probably the most important thing. And this is why I wanted to really look at sensuous wisdom as like the whole picture of our whole being on this planet. In Tantra, though, and I will speak to this because I think this is important. In Tantra, it is thought that the gods and goddesses are experiencing pleasure through us. We are the humans. We are on the planet. We are in bodies. And pleasure is a good thing, not a bad thing, like I was taught. We won't go into all of what I was taught, but let me just say, Shayleigh, you're not alone. And in addition, experiencing pleasure individually or shared pleasure is healing. It's a healing modality, if you will, and pleasure doesn't have to be sexual pleasure. It can be pleasure when you walk outside and the sky is blue and the air is fresh. And that's what I mean by sensuous, is like your whole being experiencing the pleasure of living on the planet. And there's so much that's taking that away from us, including, I think, over sexualizing, whether it's girls or boys, or anyone. The over sexualization isn't helpful in any way, in my opinion. I realize that that's a very strong opinion, but it's not. I think what's important is having a connection to our sexual energy, which is our life force energy. And as someone who has, and again, life brings us all kinds of things to deal with. I mean, you know this. Where do we find our energy? Sexual energy isn't sex per se. It is something you can utilize while making love or having sex with someone. But sexual energy is that life force. And, you know, being in your radiance, that's how I like to see it. Being in your radiance. I'm not always there. I mean, I may be teaching this all the time, but there are days where I feel like not radiant. There are days when my being, my body, my soul, my heart, they're not synced up the way I want, you know, I would like them to be. So this practice helps me personally to reconnect. And it's something I need to do fairly often. I mean, I teach, I have been teaching weekly classes online. It was something that was in person. And it still is. I have teachers teaching in person in other places. But anyway, the last thing I wanted to say about the, toning down our light, our radiance, that only serves someone else. That is not serving us in any way, shape, or form. So if even the beginning elements of this practice allow women to really remember, again, we keep coming back to remembering, because this is all about remembering. This isn't new. It's just remembering that when we're focused, like when you talk to your womb space, you heard truth. You heard and felt the truth. And that's what we're really trying to get at. So anyway.
That's super cool. I have one more thing to speak to of that. Sorry to take over this conversation, Amber, but I'm like, wow, this is so cool. So I'm just thinking about how you're like, this is our life force energy. And I'm thinking about how like the horse, you know, because Amber and I are heavily involved with horses. And how, like, you know, there's so much talk about the driving force of the horse comes from the hind end. And as a communicator, when I talk to them, there's always dysfunction in the SI joint and in their lower back and where like that sacral plexus is. And like with gelding, I talk to all the time that they will connect to, because women are primarily my clients and riders. And it's like they have issues on their left side, and they will relate it to like their person's reproductive system, or almost always when I talk to a mare that has ovary issues, it's the left ovary, or many horses, their left hind is the one that's overworked. Amber's horse with his left eye. And I'm curious, like, what your me with my left knee and all of my animals having left knee issues. And like, I know from an energetic perspective, like that left side is our feminine side, right? So I'm curious your perspective on that. Like, do you find, what is my question? I almost want to know if like, is our feminine side not strong enough? Because I don't really feel that. It's almost more like the masculine side is like overshadowing it, but I don't know if that's how can someone get more in touch, or how can we know if it's our feminine side that's lesser or a masculine side that's overpowered?
I think that's a great question. I think ultimately I'd like to have them balanced in a way that's right for us, right? So each person's going to have a little bit different balance of that. You're not alone on the left side issues, just so we're clear. I'd like to also put into this container a reminder of the culture we live in. This isn't true in all cultures, by the way. This pushing down and oppression of the feminine. There are still cultures out there that really do honor and bring forth the feminine. So just wanted to be clear that we're really talking about this culture in this moment. So good questions, because I'd like to take it, expand it out just a little bit and say that for me, the feminine and masculine can be expanded more to be receptive, and active. Okay. So receptivity, guess what? The number one thing is in order to be receptive. Does anyone know?
You have to feel worthy.
Worthy. That's actually right up there with the one I was thinking of. Anything else? How about safety?
Oh, yeah.
I would put safety first and then worthiness. Okay. But worthiness, I mean, who's telling us we're worthy and not worthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so again, culturally, there's this other piece going on. It's to be fully receptive means to be, starts with a V, vulnerable. And what is vulnerability? You know, and so then we're starting to look at, well, is it safe to be vulnerable? You know, I will just say to you, no, it's not always safe to be vulnerable. Creating safe containers is really, I mean, that's what, to me, that's what teaching teachers to teach sensuous wisdom is all about, is creating safe enough containers so women can feel safe to start to tune into their vulnerability, to start to feel that they are worthy of being receptive of all the good, all the energy, all the power, all the healing. Yeah, it is really important to take note of how we hold our bodies. All of us have experienced trauma, whether it's lowercase trauma or capital T trauma, right? Like lowercase t, capital T. Trauma, I mean, this is how I got to know Amber, actually. So Amber, I'd like to bring you into the conversation. I don't want to dominate completely, although I love sharing. But Amber, one of the things that you have done well just for so long now is work with trauma, and trauma in a human body, but also trauma. And Shayleigh, you're doing the same thing. You're working with the trauma in the animals' bodies. So I want us to think about how we hold our bodies. So I'm going to show you something. Where's your heart usually located? She says, having a science fiction background. Where is our heart usually located? It's on this side, sort of, right up here, right? Sort of in here somewhere. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, but guess how I hold my body a lot? This shoulder comes forward to protect my heart. Mm-hmm. The world expects the shoulders to go back and for me to be assertive and confident. I will tell you, this shoulder goes back pretty easily. My right side says, oh, hey, yeah, I'm ready for that. Got my spear, I'm ready. I'm right-handed too, so that might also help. So I'm ready to go. But my left side is like, and so I find that I hold my posture. I mean, it's not like that. But if I were to roll my shoulders back, and we can all do that right now, just roll your shoulders individually and just notice what you're feeling. My first response to trauma of any kind, I know I bring this shoulder forward. I know I'm like this energetically. Now, I don't know that I'm doing this physically, but this idea of protecting the heart, right? Protecting the womb space, protecting the yoni. We're all about protecting. And for those of you that don't know the word yoni, it's a Sanskrit word that I like because it's pretty, but basically it means the vulva and the vagina and all the beautiful reproductive parts of the woman. But protecting, right? We're protecting. So it's in the protection that sometimes we become guarded. So when we become guarded, we can easily shut down our intuition. We can easily shut down our ways to the other side and our connections to the other side. When we become guarded, we shut ourselves down to healing energies. And part of what Amber, just jump in here if you want to. When you're teaching about how to heal from trauma, there's a guarded that, when we talk about feeling worthy of healing, because I know that's a big part of that first aspect of healing. We have to let our guard down. But how do you let your guard down if you don't feel safe enough or you don't feel protected? So in the way that I like to work, and I know in the way Amber works, and Shayleigh in the way you work, we want to create safe enough containers that don't bypass the challenges, that don't bypass the realities, but allow for the guardedness to drop. That's when we can start to work on the left side. That's when we can start to work with the left side for receptivity. There's a power in being receptive. It's not something we're taught, but the power in being receptive is discernment. Discernment, which is many ways we think of as a mental thing, but your body, I guarantee all of us have a body that responds if we're tuned into it, right? And you both know this. This is all stuff you all teach, so I'm just kind of affirming all the teachings that you're doing. And so when we're working with the womb space or working with the yoni, so the root and the sacral chakras, right? So these are psycho-spiritual energy centers. They are connected in every possible way to all parts of us, including our intuition. We have, when our left side, okay, so now I'm going to tie it together, I promise. When our left side can relax, become stronger. So coming back to your question, this side is strong because it's protecting, but how can it become stronger in its vulnerability and its ability to receive? This side is like, I'm here, I'm ready. How do we bring them together? How do we weave them together? When we get to that point, we are able then to access our intuition, access the other realms, access the healing. And that power is the power of being actively receptive. Actively receptive. And we can practice that in this practice by dropping fully down to the root and the womb space. And then bringing that energy or allowing that energy to connect here through the solar plexus to the heart, move out into the shoulders, down the arms, and into the hands. In the practice that I teach, we often call it the headless practice because we want to keep the mind out of it. But when we're living our everyday lives, we need to bring the mind back in to a fully connected body. And so that's where discernment comes in. And so I hope I said everything, but I really appreciate your question. I mean, it's just, and I guess the last thing I want to say is, because we've all experienced some form of trauma. And by the way, one of the reasons why I use astrology is because I can look at a chart and understand where the traumas have come from and how we can work with them. So kind of tie that piece back in. That's one of the reasons why I came into my astrological phase, because I'm like, wow, it's right here in the chart. I can see it. So if I can help someone find that remedy to bring their trauma to a place where they're able to work with it, heal it, and drop the guardedness so that when they need protection, they have protection. I don't want anyone walking around, all open all the time. I want us to be protected, but not guarded, empowered, and fully loving ourselves completely. So, okay. You guys are great. I mean, you're just listening. I thank you.
I mean, I love it. It sounds amazing to me. And I'm like thinking of all the things, like I recorded this meditation for a 21-day vision quest. And then I was out doing it with my horses, bawling my little eyes out to like my own voice, which was very weird. And I was connecting with Biggie because he's always had this like guardedness in the left shoulder. And sometimes when I use him in my communication classes, like that's the first thing he brings up. It's always the left shoulder, left shoulder. And when you look at him physically, like, sure, you could probably see it, but I've always felt like it was deeper than that, because he was starved, and then he had something removed from his foot. And so it's just so interesting how this is all like in perfect timing, like hearing you speak about this, because I asked him the other day, like, what is it about the left shoulder that's still serving you? And he's like, well, the left shoulder is holding betrayal in me. And until you can let it go in you, I'm going to have to keep holding on to it. And it was wild how like he moved me through that process and like took that betrayal out. But yeah, you make a really good point about like guarding our heart and being more, I follow this body worker who talks about how horses are all, for the most part, contracted to the right, and humans are contracted to the right, like even in embryology. And so it makes so much sense that we come into this world like with our hearts guarded. So I guess is that past, why do we come into the world with our hearts already guarded? Is that past life stuff, for one? And then two, I'm curious how, like, speaking to like numerology and astrology and stuff, like how does our like individuality blend with like the collective consciousness, because there is like that piece, right?
Yes, you're on it. I just want to make some notes because I don't want to forget these questions because they're really good. Why do we come in this way? You know, this is a great question. And our souls travel many lifetimes. Earth, well, and this is my belief. I don't believe that Earth is the only place we incarnate. I don't know where those other places are, but I am certain there are other places, other spaces. I do believe that Earth is particularly amazing. It's also probably the most challenging place that we choose to come to. So why do we come in guarded? Because I think it's the most challenging place that we come into. Now, you know, if we look back in time, the matriarchal cultures that existed thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. And I'm going to suggest this. I've been telling this to my clients, and I'm just going to remind people there's a book called The Great Cosmic Mother. It's a really big book, big, fat book, but I really recommend that book. I think most of us, unless you have a degree in women's studies, most people don't know the anthropology, sociology of how women were. I mean, our cultures were matriarchal long before they were patriarchal. They were totally different. Maybe we didn't have these problems back then. I don't know. I mean, I would say probably not. But to answer your question, past life, yes. Just the fact that, I mean, even if you were a new soul and you're just coming in for the first time, you're like, oh God, it's Earth. And yet we plan to come into Earth because this is where we're going to learn the most. I mean, we get to experience everything here, right? So yeah, so that's my thought on that. You can take it with a grain of salt, but that's my theory. Now, numerology and astrology and the collective consciousness. This is all really important. So when the soul comes onto the planet, at the time we're born, there's a little snapshot taken astrologically. Astronomy and astrology don't always line up exactly. So I just need to say that. At one time they did. But astrologers have chosen to keep the same kind of chart because it works. And thousands of years have gone into understanding the psychology of astrology, essentially. Like, how are the stars and the planets and all of this energy supporting us in our journey? Numerology is my fave. I mean, they're all my fave, actually, I guess. But the numerology is a lot of fun because it can also help us figure out who we are, what we have to bring in this lifetime. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot of things you can do in numerology as well. But ultimately, it ends up being that we're here together collectively, right? So when I talk about, like, let's talk about Mercury going retrograde tomorrow. Let's just get really real. And Venus retrograde. Amber, your favorite topic.
Perfect, because we
Venus
have to like do
retrograde.
all of the work for the 21-day thing. And I was like, don't worry. I was telling my mom and my sister, I was like, Mercury's going in retrograde tomorrow. So I canceled my weekend clinic and I'm just going to be working, creating
Yeah,
magic things.
that's perfect. There's no need to be afraid of Mercury retrograde. Just use it for what it's good for, right? Which is to review and renew and go ahead and back up all those computers and make sure that everything's recording when you want it to and all of those things. But, you know, from when you start combining all these retrogrades collectively, so to get to the question, we're all in this together. We're all moving together, but we're all separate souls. And we all come in with a very unique chart of how our lives are unfolding, our talents and our gifts. Someone asked me the other day, what do you do with twins? Like, and these days, twins, you know, it used to be, and you know this, you guys know so much. Twins could be 2 to 3 hours apart in the past before they started taking them out, right? They could come, and so they would have different rising signs, their charts would be different. But nowadays, you just pluck them both out. They might be 30 seconds apart. And I have had over the last, I don't know, 25 years, been able to look at different twins charts, including ones that are younger. So maybe 14 now. And what I found is, the chart is one thing, right? The soul, hello, we are individual souls. Okay, but yeah, are we a collective soul? Probably yes. Okay, so yes, are we all one? Yes. And we're here on a journey individually to reconnect with all these other parts of ourselves, within ourself and within the collective. So twins could come in and one could lean into the rising sign and one could lean into the sun sign. One could lean into the moon. They vary so much. And that's how you get the variations, is the soul's journey. Like essentially, yeah, they're on a similar journey. They chose to incarnate together, and that's got its own path, right? Yeah, twins are fascinating. And recently had a wonderful, dear person in my life give birth to triplets. And now that's a fascinating thing, right? I mean, multiple births are not all that unusual, I think, in the animal kingdom, but for humans, it's not usually the usual thing. But Amber, let's bring you into the conversation. Let's talk about how your experience of the collective thing, like a Venus retrograde, how do you walk through it individually? How are you as a soul approaching each of these experiences that we have collectively?
It's funny, like for the people listening, I met Denise in I don't know, 2018, maybe something like that, 2018. Yeah. And I feel like when I very first went to get my very first reading and I sat across from you and you told me all these things and I was like, that doesn't sound like me at all. Like, that's crazy. You're a wild woman. That sounds like fun, but not me. The idea of it, by the way, for people listening, she's very accurate. I am in fact doing all the things she said I was going to be doing. But it was really the process to get from a place of being so afraid to be seen and being so afraid to be heard, hating my own voice, and now all I do is freaking blab for a living. And I feel like this very last what was it, August, July was wild for a lot of people, but I do feel like it was the first time that when we did that cosmic forecast and I was listening to you and I really had that same experience that I did the first time we met, where I was like, I'll be fine, that stuff's not gonna happen, because it was a pretty freaking wild ride for me. But I feel like I was so prepared, and none of it involved any of the old patterns that I would have done before. And so it was very uncomfortable, but the willingness to understand it. And after so many freaking years, actually be in integrity and integrate and do something. It's I think I'm like a little obsessed with the whole, yeah, I know what to do. Oh, I know I shouldn't. I know I should this and da, 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 and you do it anyways because it's just like fun sometimes.
Yeah.
Like after experiencing that for so many years, finally it's like, like I'm completely ready to feel what needs to be felt and then choose something completely different. And I was talking to a friend about these patterns that we have, and as a collective, everyone everyone is being so squeezed right now in lots of different ways. And for the people that are like making that conscious choice to take their power back and say like absolutely not, it's like and just in the last like month for me has been completely different, and it has only just come from me choosing myself. And so when you talk about the amount of issues I had on my left side when I was married, and I had met a friend in the area that does cranial, and I didn't know what cranial was at all. And I laid on her table and she basically took me through my body. It was like meditation through my body. We're talking to body parts, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I just want you to fix my neck. Like, I can't move. I had no idea. And it was so interesting because the pattern with that was I had discs that they wanted to inject and all these things. But the moment I moved out of my old property and got a divorce and it was finalized, all of that chronic pain that I had had for like 2 years was gone.
Yeah.
And when it did pop back up, it's because I was in a similar situation with someone completely different. So when you talk about like, and it was all on the left side, and that was where I even learned about like having a masculine and a feminine side. But so yeah, so that piece of after years of finally going, oh yeah, I know that. I know. I finally feel like I chose different but for real, for real.
Yeah. So that's really bringing it all together. Like during the Venus retrograde, you have been on wild ride. I mean, and you've shared some of that. I won't share anything you haven't shared, but I think finding your path, integrating the body, knowing the body wisdom, your discernment, right? Your mental, your heart, our hearts are vulnerable, right? Remember, our hearts are vulnerable, but that doesn't mean to guard them. And that, I think, to walk through life unguarded, but protected, it's like, okay, left shoulder back. What am I going to do with this?
Yeah. What's so interesting about that is my drive during it was like shortly after, and I was doing this really thick like thick files of review of relationship that I had been in. And when I say, well, I speak mostly to that because I think that's where my challenge spot is. Like, I'm good with my horses, I'm good with my clients, I'm like working through the business stuff. Like, so for me, it's like relationship. And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not afraid to be alone. I actually enjoy it now. But then I found myself going like swinging the other direction where I was like, I could just do this forever. Like, this is nice. But then, and so when I was driving and I was reviewing, that part of me that wanted to be guarded and say like, I can just do this and I don't ever have to put myself in a position where I can get hurt because it's cool, I'm good. I realized that in my review, I knew and Denise has been with me for a long time, so she's been through all of the relationships with me. Like, she's even met like one. And I know that was a wild ride all in itself, but it was like I knew from the first moment, from the first conversation with each one of those people, that I was like, this is not. And I can remember the exact word for word moment that those things were in the last 4 relationships I've been in, where I was like, oh, but I chose anyways because dopamine and all the things are so fun. But I then got to the point, even just in the last like week, where I was like, I don't have to be afraid to be in relationship because I know I no longer will ever not listen to that. So I can remain open because I'm not just abandoning myself repeatedly in those things. So I'm hoping my left shoulder can just stay. Also my left side. But yeah, it was that, oh, I don't have to be afraid of that. I can stay open with clients, with even us putting this stuff out there. I was actually looking at even just like doing we're going to put this vision quest out publicly, in the next couple of weeks. And thinking about the sales pitch, even thinking about the last tea time that me and Shayleigh just had, we talked about like past lives. We talked like we were way into the woo. And that I can say 3 years ago, I would have been like, ooh, how do I word this so people can, now I'm like, I don't even care, dude. If you don't like it, that's cool. There's lots of people for you to learn from, right? So it's like in every aspect of embodying like who I am and not being afraid is because I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, oh, I will never abandon my, values or anything like that in business and friendships, in business partnerships and whatever it is, right? So then all of a sudden you don't have to be shut down and scared. You can, move into it. And I've survived everything so far, so I figure, well, fuck it, like it'll be fine.
Yes, you and Venus are having a very strong connection. And I'll just say from an astrological point of view, knowing where your Venus is in your chart, traversing this territory. And actually this morning I was thinking about for next year, I think I'm going to offer, I think it's going to be 12 weeks of Venus. And we won't have a Venus retrograde next year. So I think it's like preparation to just really understand your Venus, understand your divine feminine, how to embody her, how to embody the energy. And so I haven't mapped it out yet, but that came to me in the shower because all the best ideas come in the shower. Am I right? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So Amber, one of the things, I have a confession to make.
Yes.
One of the things that has really inspired me, particularly in the last, I mean, we may have met even as early as 2017. I don't remember the exact time.
That's when I moved here.
Yeah, so maybe 2018 then, but for sure 5 years. It feels like I've known you forever. Like just like we've deepened in so many different ways over the years. But what I want to say is that your expression, Shayleigh's expression, other women I know who have just really just been out there and saying, this is who we are. This is what we do. This is, this is it. This is magic. It's practical. It's alive. It's passionate. That's been inspiring for me because I come from a time where I've received death threats multiple times for who I am. And so talk about being guarded. When social media came along, I was like, oh no. No, that is not happening in my world because it didn't feel safe enough. When you travel this lifetime, and we hear a lot, this is a trendy phrase right now, the witch wound. It's a real thing. And interestingly, I can't remember, Amber, you might know, but there was a theta healing class where we worked on some of that many bazillion years ago for me, back in 2011 and 2012. But that reminder that we collectively, so coming back to Shayleigh's question too, collectively, our DNA, our energetic bodies, the morphogenetic field, we've all experienced this on some level. So how do we feel safe enough to fully express who we are? And so I feel I get inspired every day by you, by both of you, by other women that I have taught who have been my students, who are now out there doing the work. You all are amazing because you are expressing your authentic selves without shame, without fear. And even if you have fear, you're doing it a little anyway. And with this openness to the world cannot heal until we all come to this place of authentically being who we are. And that's what Pluto is here doing right now in our charts, collectively. So this goes to Shayleigh's question as well. Pluto, that's a whole other journey, the planet of death and rebirth and transformation and healing, along with a lot of other things, is in its last stages of being in Capricorn. Pluto takes about 248 years to go around a chart. So, this is not a big stretch to let us know that, hey, this is the last time we're going to be seeing Pluto in Capricorn, and we are about to move into Pluto in Aquarius. And basically what that means is, what are we letting go of right now? Amber, you just put it together so succinctly. I have these patterns. I don't want to keep doing this. I want to let those go. Oh, hey, maybe if I slip into one, that's okay. I let it go sooner, but I'm just going to keep being more fully who I am. The woo, the whatever, be oneself, be your whole self, and be your loving, compassionate self, be your powerful self. Pluto's like, yeah, what do you need to let go of in order to do that? Shame is number one. Fear, unworthiness, lack of self-worth, all the things that you are all talking about this a lot. But how do we really do that? Pluto digs deep, deep, deep. When a planet is in the last degrees of its sign, guess what? It gets more intense because the lessons become ever more clear for us. And guess what? Pluto is the most intense of all the planets. So, hello, intensity in this moment. So what's happening really is the universe is on our side. The cosmos is on our side. The cosmos is like, to me, Denise, are you gonna keep dragging this around? I'm like, just a little longer, just a little longer. Just a little longer. And the cosmos is like, at your time and running out. I mean, you can do whatever you want. You got free will, but do you really want to take this with you? Well, and the idea is, what is the wound? What is the wound? And how can I work to heal that wound enough? I mean, we're not, am I going to heal it 100%? Maybe not. We come back to our conversation around sexuality. We're living in a pretty strange culture. So how do I heal all my wounds around that in a culture where it's not safe? But we heal it enough. We bring it into the light. We keep bringing it into safe enough spaces where we can talk about that. And then Pluto exhales and says, okay, that's good enough. I'm moving into Aquarius now. So let's get clear. What changes do we need to have in the collective? So we're moving into a new, I hear a lot about the age of Aquarius, the age of Pisces, all these different ages. Okay, I get it. And I feel like Pluto is a great way to track where we're headed, because it's where we're going to have the most evolution in our personal lives and in our collective lives. So next January, Pluto moves into Aquarius, January 24th, and stays there for 20 years. So I ask us, how much do I want to pack in the bags to go into the future? What do I want to take? What do I want to leave behind? And it's okay if I want to take some reminders so I don't, but again, like what Shayleigh said, how is this serving you? She asked, you asked your horse, how is this? And you were curious. You weren't judging. You're just saying, seriously, how is this serving you right now? How is this? And your horse was like, here you go. This is how it's serving me. How's it serving you, Shayleigh? And it's like, well, I don't know. It's a good question. So here we are. What are we going to take with us? Oh, and by the way, Pluto is also our sexual energy, the divine feminine of sexual energy. So when we pull it all together, what we're really talking about is this powerful cosmic energy moving into a brand new era where it's really about how we're relating to each other. It's about being more free in our expression and not being held back. So there you go. We're probably over time, but I had to, you give me one little, I'll take them, talk a lot.
Oh, good. So much fun. I mean, I feel like every time we do a guest podcast, I'm like, we could go on and on because I have like 6 other things, but then I try to rein it in. We'll just have to do like multiple calls with our guests because I feel like each one could have had like a part 2. But yeah, I will say my favorite part about knowing all the people that I know now, and I feel like the people that, because I said no to certain things without um without bringing forward all the like people pleasy stuff that I've had for my whole life, and like how fun it is to be able to like align with all of the people that I get to align with, like all the people we're co-creating with and all the guests that we have. It's just like every single person that we talk to is doing the same work, but in like their own completely different way. And I feel like the intention that I really hold whenever we do any of our programs or the podcast or anything is like, I just want like everybody to just be so tapped into who they actually are and then just stop giving fucks.
Yes.
Everybody needs to stop giving fucks.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yes, I appreciate having that conversation with you. And so at the moment, you said you were wrapping most of your programs up and stuff like that. But if people want to find you, where are the best places to find you?
Thank you for asking. So website, DeniseElizabethByron.com. I know it's a mouthful, but after my divorce, I didn't change my name when I got married. So I brought my middle name in. It was my sort of like, this is who I am, right? I'm here in the world. So DeniseElizabethByron.com. If people want to get on the Cosmic Compass mailing list, Cosmic Compass is a Monday. It's not every Monday, but most Mondays at 10 a.m. Pacific. I do post things on YouTube most weeks after the conversation. I interview people sometimes. I'll do a tarot reading. I'll talk astrology. It's about an hour. It's free. It's just my way.
Into a podcast.
I know. I know. I know. I know. I know. I know. I'm dying. I gotta leave some stuff behind first. Okay. Yeah, I gotta, unpack some bags and get real about what's happening here. So yeah, that is a free way to get on my mailing list. And then from there, I am really thinking about this Venus program because I think it would be I'm doing something now that's wrapping up called Embodying the Goddesses. Holy camole. That has been, okay. Yeah. All I have to say about that is 13 goddesses. We had to extend it to 15 months because at one point we're like, Lilith, you need 2 months, and every goddess we could spend a year on. And basically what that is taking the asteroids, the goddesses, taking the myths, really looking at our lived experience of our astrology, and then applying that with somatic, with movement, music, all of the above, meditation, all of it. That's been great. And that's a beta program. And well, you guys know from your 21-day challenge, you could, like what you did in 21 days, you could do in 21 years, right? You could take each day and expand it into a year. That's how I feel about these programs. So Cosmic Compass list. And then from there, just hang on while I try to figure out what I'm doing next year. And people can always have individual sessions. I'm still doing those. I'm not going to give them up. I love them so much. And yeah, so that's the best way.
Perfect.
I'm gonna have to figure out how to get more succinct. I don't know. Whatever. I just be me.
Yeah.
I'm just me. Those 30-second things when you're in those networking groups and they say, okay, do your 30-second elevator pitch. This is what I do.
Yeah, that's what I do too. I do that too.
I know I do. I can definitely not do anything in 30 seconds.
I think it's supposed to be 11-second elevator pitch.
Oh, what?
20 seconds?
I'm just gonna stand there.
Really short. I think it's like a really short, like, because you have to be able to tell people what you do in the time that the elevator moves up and down the floor.
Oh, yes, Mandy.
My husband always that I have so many words in only one mouth. And I feel like I do attract friends like that too, where like it's like you have one conversation and it's like that one conversation's like got little legs on it, and it's like, okay, we have this, and this within that.
You got it. You've got it dialed in. Well, I just want to say how much I love you both. I appreciate you both so much. Shayleigh, we don't know each other super well, but just in the times that we've been able to talk, I'm just really deeply respectful of you and your work. And Amber, you know how much I love you. And Cosmic Forecast every month has been so much fun for me. So we're going to keep doing that, I hope. And
Especially
whatever
now,
I
I
can
realize that
do.
like I don't know if I can be okay without it at this point. Now I feel like I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen next month. But after last month, I'm like, did you
You're,
did
yeah.
you hear? Did you listen to the? I'm like, Shayleigh, I put it. You need to go listen to the monthly forecast because like we're never gonna make it unless we know it. I'm like so
Wow.
codependent on
You
it.
will make it. You will make it. And I'm always happy to do it. And I just, the other thing I want to say to both of you, however I can support you and your offerings, what you're doing is extraordinarily powerful healing work. It is deep and it is fun. You have found a good balance. So congratulations with that. It's
Thank you.
inspiring. Yeah.
I know we were just talking about how like so many people have said that to us like in the group and like messaged us and we're like cool, yeah, so I'm having intrusive thoughts about my horse transitioning. we
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
we're like, oh, that's so great that we're doing these great things, you know, and then we're like, and back to real life. Like,
Yeah, no, the real life is what it's about ultimately. I mean, that's making, making magic practical, bringing the mystical into the reality of the earth plane. I know that's why we're here. I mean, there's no other reason to be here because we could be in the mystical out there in the mystic realm, or we could be here and bring that with us into this realm. So, yeah.
yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yay. All right. Well, it was amazing talking to you. Shayleigh, do you have anything else that you feel like you need to say?
I don't think so. Thanks for joining us. It's super awesome.
Well,
Thank you.
any of you guys out there watching whenever we put this out, when will we put this out? I'm you can I'll put the link for the membership in the show notes for tea time, the tea house, and then you're just like gonna have to wait and see, I guess, when this gets released, what we're doing next, because we do have a few ideas actually that just percolated, but I'm like, wait, we have to finish this first one because the second one's so good. So
Excellent.
yeah, just stay tuned.
Perfect. Yay.
All
That sounds
right.
great. Thank you both.